This is a Thursday afternoon 28storms.com update on Tropical Storm Isaac. The latest official information we have from the National Hurricane Center is as of the 2 p.m. Eastern Time, intermediate advisory. Maximum sustained winds were still only 40 miles per hour. The storm was moving toward the west-northwest at 15 miles per hour, and they were forecasting Isaac to still become a Category 1 hurricane before reaching the southwest tip of Haiti, with temporary weakening back to a tropical storm as it crosses eastern Cuba, followed up by re-strengthening into a hurricane as it passes over the Florida Keys by 8 a.m. on Monday. And you can see the storm was forecast to continue moving in a general northwest direction toward the Florida Panhandle by 8 a.m. on Tuesday. Over the past 48 to 72 hours, all of our updated track forecasts within each video update has been a tad west of the official National Hurricane Center track, and we do believe that more adjustments toward the west will be needed over the next 24 hours. These spaghetti models are oftentimes the ones shown the most on television, and they are still indicating a South Florida landfall. While this cannot be discounted, especially for the Florida Keys, as we still think that there will be significant impacts more toward the south, some of the more reliable models that are often not talked about are showing a more westward track into the open waters of the Southeast Gulf and a little bit more toward the west of Miami, Florida. The 18Z afternoon run of the intensity models are still keeping the storm fairly weak within the next 3 to 5 days, mainly due to land interaction, and they are showing a general intensity of tropical storm or Category 1 strength. However, any deviation to the north or south of Cuba could make the odds of a significant redevelopment in the Gulf of Mexico more likely. The latest data from the hurricane hunters, combined with satellite imagery, is still suggesting that Isaac is not the most well-defined of tropical storms. The surface center still appears to be somewhat to the north of the strongest convection, with the mid-level circulation displaced a little bit to the southwest. Having said that, over the past 3 hours it does seem as though the storm is at least trying to become better defined, and we could see another round of intensification as early as sometime this evening or during the overnight. And keep in mind that the Hurricane Center is still forecasting a Category 1 hurricane intensity as the storm is forecast to move through Haiti. The next 24 hours are highly critical to the official Hurricane Center track forecast, because if the storm continues to deviate more toward the west, then that is also going to enhance the chances of the storm moving out into the open waters of the southeast Gulf of Mexico. And if it moves more away from Florida, then this will have more room and time to develop over the very warm waters of the southern Gulf, and this could translate to a stronger hurricane once it finally makes landfall somewhere across the central or eastern Gulf Coast. As the storm continues to move west-northwestward, dry air should become less and less of a problem for intensification with time, and the vertical wind shear should remain light, as we do have a very strong and intense upper-level ridge that is forecast to move in tandem with the tropical cyclone as it heads toward the southeast Gulf. We already talked about the extremely warm water temperatures, so the only real detriment beyond 24 to 48 hours will be land interaction with the Greater Antilles. This is the latest 500 millibar forecast from the GFS model, and as we mentioned just a moment ago, there is still the potential that the models are too far north with the track over the next 24 to 36 hours. We are going to have to see it bend more toward the north in the current heading of the storm for this short-term motion to verify, but interests across Hispaniola should be anticipating over 20 inches of rainfall in some of the heavier terrain, and flash flooding and mudslides are going to be a life-threatening issue there for the next couple of days. Now, despite the potential for the track being too far to the north over the next 24 to 48 hours, the GFS is coming into better agreement with other guidance that a central Gulf Coast landfall is becoming more likely. But before that happens, we do have to first deal with the potential impacts across the Florida Keys, and right now the GFS is still suggesting a Category 1 hurricane landfall sometime Sunday night or early Monday morning. Thereafter, the GFS is starting to show more in the way of ridging immediately to the north of Isaac over the southeast United States, and more ridging to the north would imply a continued westerly or northwesterly track, and the latest solution from this model is showing a final landfall somewhere near Pensacola, Fort Walton Beach, Destin, or even Mobile, Alabama. So this is going to be something that we will have to monitor if the trend does indeed continue, but the current timetable for a landfall here, at least based on this model, is late Tuesday night into early Wednesday morning. The GFS ensemble mean has also shifted toward the west. In fact, they are slightly more toward the west of the GFS operational run, and they are suggesting a track somewhere toward the Mississippi, Alabama, or extreme western Florida Panhandle coastline by Wednesday morning. For the past 2 to 3 days, it has been the ECMWF model that has been leading the charge with the idea of a more westerly track, and we see that continuing this afternoon. Within the next 48 to 72 hours, there is fairly good agreement between the GFS and the ECMWF, but the European is trending even stronger with the amount of ridging that it has indicated over the southeast United States. Therefore, by day 5 and day 6, we continue to see the European as the westernmost solution. In fact, the European has shifted even more toward the west, and it is currently suggesting a 7-day landfall somewhere near Lake Charles, Louisiana. Even the CMC model, which has a significant northerly and easterly bias, has shifted much more toward the west this afternoon. It is now showing a track over South Florida and into Apalachicola within the next 4 to 6 days. So everyone from South Florida, from the Florida Big Bend westward into even eastern Texas at this point, needs to keep a very close watch on Isaac, as it is likely to become a hurricane problem for much of the U.S. Gulf Coast. So with all of these factors being considered, this is the latest unofficial forecast from 28storms.com. Tomorrow afternoon, we do agree with the Hurricane Center that the storm will be approaching southwest Haiti, although we are keeping the storm as a strong tropical storm instead of a Category 1 hurricane, although it is a bit of a toss-up, and the same can be said for the intensity as the storm begins to move over eastern Cuba in 2 days. The forecast disagreement becomes a little greater between Monday through Wednesday, as we do think that the storm will emerge from the northwest tip of Cuba, a little more to the west of Key West, Florida, but keep in mind that this would still place you in the northeast quadrant of a potential minimal hurricane. So you want to be listening to what the latest official information is from the National Hurricane Center, the Key West Weather Office, and the latest evacuation information from your local emergency management officials. Finally, as we go into August 28th, 5 days from now, we are situating the track a little bit more toward the U.S. Central Gulf Coast, and all interest from extreme eastern Texas eastward through the Florida Panhandle are under the best bet of a landfall from this system. Keep in mind that this is a 5-day forecast track, and a lot can still change. As a matter of fact, the 4 to 5 day intensity forecast is even more uncertain than the track, because if the storm tracks just to the south or just to the north of Cuba, then the inner core of the storm could be more ready for re-strengthening once over the southeast Gulf, and the southeast Gulf is forecast to be very favorable. So the big question is, what is the internal structure of Isaac going to be once it emerges over these very favorable and warm sea surface temperatures? As of right now, we have the 5-day intensity at Category 2 status, but this could be a little too aggressive if the storm takes a direct track over all of Cuba and much of western Haiti. But again, if it tracks just to the south or just to the north, the intensity forecast could be a little on the conservative side. So that wraps up your Thursday afternoon update on Tropical Storm Isaac from us here at 28storms.com. Keep it tuned to the front page for more blog discussions. And also, if you would like to tune in and ask some questions within the chat room, we will have a live broadcast at 12 a.m. Eastern Time later on this evening, so you may want to check in for that.